Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back to the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be creating a holiday card and we are going to add a sentiment that is die cut using the Blessed and Blessing stamp set, and we're also going to be using the Dashing Deer stamp set. Now I want to use the holiday blessing sentiment, but I want to use the blessings from the die cut word as well as the stamped image. And the reason for that is I want to use gilding flakes on this card. Now if you're not familiar with gilding flakes, these are very lightweight little flakes of like gold and silver. They are extremely messy and they are a lot of fun to play with. And I really wanted to create a holiday card with a little bit of the gold and silver mixed together. So I'm going to create a strip of gilding flakes for the outside edges of my card, and then I'm also going to use them for the sentiment that we're going to add to the card as well. So I have a bunch of rolls of score tape here, and I'm just going to kind of pick and choose what ones I want to use for the area that I want to cover with the adhesive to use the gilding flakes. Now depending on how wide your score tape is will depend if you can use it on its own or if you need to kind of use a couple of strips side by side. So for this first one here, I'm just going to do a strip of the gilding flakes. So this 1-inch score tape is going to work perfectly. So I've just adhered it to a white cardstock panel, and I'm using my bone folder to really press that down and make sure it's adhered onto the panel. Now I also want to cut out the word blessings from some score tape as well, so you can see this one is a little bit too thin. Now I could double it up and put 2 rows side by side, but since I have the thicker roll of the score tape, I'm just going to go ahead and add a piece of that to another piece of cardstock. Now when I finish this here, I'm also going to use the bone folder to really press that down, and then I'm going to die cut this word blessings right through the score tape and the cardstock piece. Now once I have it die cut, I'm going to use my little poker tool and kind of press through the die just to kind of let that release from the score tape without actually having that word pop out. I want to keep it inside of the cardstock panel so that it's easier to add the gilding flakes. We do need to remove the backing sheet from that word though, so I did use my poker tool and I just very carefully lifted that out so that I have the adhesive showing on the word blessings. I've also removed the backer sheet from the strip there so I have adhesive showing there as well. I also have a Swiffer cloth on hand to help with cleanup since this can be quite messy, and the Swiffer cloth is really great with all the static since these little flakes kind of float and go all over the place. So I'm just going to open up both of the containers, and you can see that as soon as I open them, they kind of spill out. And like I said, this is a very messy craft, and if you don't like a lot of mess, then you might not love gilding flakes, but I think the mess is totally worth it because I love the end result. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking my fingers and kind of pinching into the containers and picking up some flakes. And I started first with the silver, and I just kind of let them fall onto the adhesive. So you don't have to overly press them in. They are going to stick with no problem once they come in contact with that adhesive. So I'm just kind of going back and forth between the two colors and just adding these on until I have both surfaces completely covered. Once I have that done, I'm just going to try and push everything back into the container and salvage as much as I can. And then I'm going to take my finger and kind of press down to make sure it's adhered onto that adhesive. And then I'm going to take a paintbrush and just kind of go over top of the whole surface to knock off any of that extra gilding flakes. Now I normally use a stencil brush, which is like a very stiff brush to do this part, but I couldn't find mine. So I'm just using a normal paintbrush and I'm just going over the surface until I have all of the excess taken off. And then I laid it down on my work surface and really use that paintbrush to work those gilding flakes into the adhesive. And what you're left with is this beautiful effect where we have this kind of foiled look, but it's a little bit messier than foil. It's not as smooth. It kind of gives you a nice, really faint texture. And we have all of that silver and gold kind of blended together. This is one of my favorite things about using gilding flakes is that you can mix the colors, and when you are finished with all of the adhering and kind of take off all the extra, it almost looks like it was meant to be together. Everything kind of just molds together, and it's a beautiful effect where we have both the silver and the gold. And I love mixing silver and gold for holiday cards, so this is a really great option to do that. Now for the sentiment, I did run that through my die cut machine a second time just to really press that through the cardstock once I had the gilding flakes on. And then I just popped out the interior pieces and it's left me with this beautiful sentiment that matches our strip perfectly that we've created. So now what I'm going to do is work on the rest of the card pieces so that we can assemble our finished card. So I want to stamp an image here with the Dashing Deer stamp set. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab one of the deer images from this set and I'm going to stamp it onto a piece of smooth white cardstock. I stamped the image with black licorice hybrid ink so I can use my Copic markers to color in the image, and now I'm going to just quickly go through the coloring process. I didn't do anything super fancy. I'm just using some E41, E42, and E43 to color in the deer's body. And I wanted to keep him pretty light in color. I really want the focus of the card to be the gilding flakes, that really beautiful foiling that we've created. So I wanted to keep the deer kind of light in color so that he's there as an accent, but he's not kind of taking center stage on the card. So I just quickly colored him with some lighter brown colors, and then I added some red to his scarf and his little hat. And now I'm going to trim this gilding flake piece here that we've created. I had originally wanted to have that on a panel and have a portrait card, but I realized that the blessing sentiment was going too far across the card for the design I had in mind, so I decided to change it up and create a landscape card and put the foiling strips on both the top and the bottom of the card. So I've cut a panel of white cardstock that measures 5.5 inches across and 3 3/4 inches high, and I'm going to do a little bit of inking on here before we start to assemble the card. So I have the Drifts and Hills stencil, and I'm going to just add a little bit of snowcone ink with the stencil to my card base. And my plan here is to kind of create some snow drifts, and I thought that the blue worked really nice to kind of add a really light, subtle color there that is going to kind of give the look of snow. Once I had the drifts on there, I also took the snowfall stencil and I very lightly went over that with the same snow cone ink. Now this doesn't show up a lot, but it's just enough detail to put a little bit of snow behind the deer image and fill up a little bit of that white space. I decided I wanted one more drift, so I did add one more in the middle. And now I'm just stamping the word holiday from that Holiday Blessing stamp set from the Dashing Deer set, and I'm just stamping that onto a white piece of cardstock, which I've trimmed down into a little strip. And that is going to create our entire sentiment that's going to say Holiday Blessings. So now it's time to put everything together and create this holiday card. So I've taken both of the gilding strips that I've created and I'm adding one to both the top and the bottom of our card base. And this card base measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, so it's a standard A2 size card. Once I had the gilding strips on there, I did put the center panel onto the card base, and now I'm going to figure out how I want to position both the deer and my sentiments. So I'm just kind of positioning everything onto the card base to figure out exactly how I like it before I adhere anything down. So once I was happy with the design, I trimmed down the sentiment strip there and added a little bit of a slanted edge to the right side. And then I'm going to adhere this directly to my deer image. And I'm going to do this first before I add it to the card so that I can use my grid mat and make sure that everything is lined up perfectly and the sentiment strip is going to be straight across from the deer. Once I have it assembled, I'm going to go ahead and add the deer into the little snowdrifts that we've created. And I'm leaving that blessings word in place so I can make sure that everything is going to fit onto the card before I adhere it down. Now for this word here, I decided to use liquid glue since it is kind of intricate and the liquid glue allows me to easily cover the entire back and then gives me a few minutes to kind of move it around until I'm happy with the placement before I fully adhere it down. Once I was happy with everything, I just used my fingers and really pressed it down into the card base, and I also added a little bit more adhesive under that sentiment strip to make sure it was fully adhered down. And now I have all of the main elements adhered to the card front. To add a little bit more detail, I am using a white gel pen to add some dot detail to the deer's back and also to his nose area, and I also add a little bit onto the tip of his tail. I'm also going to add some clear sequins to the card, and I'm going to fill the centers with silver stickles. I made sure to put one of the sequins on top of the eye to finish off the sentiment, and now our card is complete. I hope this card gave you some ideas on ways to use gilding flakes and that you'll give them a try. They really are a fun product even though they are a little bit messy. So thanks so much for joining me today. Please leave a comment on this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would like a chance to win a $20 gift card to the MFT online store. And I will see you in another video soon. Thanks for watching.